But if an employee is in fact routinely overstating their leave time and that sort of thing, that's something that they would catch. And so,
Yeah, and we can give you we keep that materiality is about the only thing we have that we don't really share with anybody, just because we don't want management to come in just right below those levels to commit that. But kind of on a general level, if you look at total assets of a fund, you can guess it's around 5 to 10% of what that number is what we kind of deem materiality to be. And every firm has a little bit different formula that they use, but essentially at a high level, it's judgment as to if this number was misstated by this amount, would somebody use these financials, investors or bondholders, would they be hurt with that information? So, yeah.
This is the materiality concept, and then there's the tolerable error. So
Yes.
that's like an insignificant dollar amount that you're like, okay, there's this mistake, but it's tolerable. We're going to pass on that because it's not significant to the users of the financials.
Correct. Yep. You got it. So yeah, it's a fun business, a lot of judgment, a lot of communication with management.
Okay.
So, yeah. But we appreciate that's really it. And if
Well,
you
thank
guys ever
you.
have questions, just don't hesitate to reach out.
Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the FY25 budget closeout.
I'm going to pass around these handouts.
Same exact documents.
Did everybody get one at the table? And Danielle's going to pass around to anybody that wants one. What we're highlighting here is, as Clint said, we have closed out fiscal year 25. We closed the books on fiscal year 24, 25. And what you see reported here as actual figures is what we have turned over to the auditors. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things here in the general fund. And I have this same information for all of the funds of the city. I'm going to send out a few more in your council packets, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to highlight the general fund, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Norman Forward Fund. But again, if you have an interest in any other funds, let me know. We'll send you this sort of detail as well. So here in the general fund, which as you know is the largest fund of the city, and by definition is the fund that accounts for all of the revenues and expenditures that are not accounted for someplace else. That's the actual statutory definition of the general fund. Couple of things I wanted to highlight here. In column A, you see where we estimated the revenues for fiscal year 25 for sales tax on line 4. And in column B, you see the actual revenue. So we're about $1.8 million short of where we estimated we would be for that particular revenue source. The other one is in the other revenue category on line 10. We were quite a bit short of our estimate there. That is the largest things in that category. And again, it's a category of revenue. But the largest things in there are the convenience fees and fees for technology fee that the courts charge. Those sorts of things are in that category. And we were quite a bit short, basically because there's a major credit card charge that we are not charging to the public anymore. We are not passing that fee on because it was reduced from our merchant processor. So that is a revenue source that's probably going to remain down where it has been, and we'll correct that in next year's budget. Yes, sir.
How much that is, off the top of your head, how much that fee is?
I'm only looking at the category, but I'm going to say that particular fee is probably budgeted at about $750,000.
What, if we were charging that to residents, what would that, is it $2 or?
It was $3.
It's $3. So the city is eating $3 per transaction? Okay.
On line 22, you see that we were quite a bit short of our capital outlay revenues. If you drop down to line 37, you see that that's basically a money in, money out, where all of the capital equipment expenditures that we budget for, where equipment is going to be booked to the general fund, but the revenue is reimbursed from the capital fund. So where we were short of revenue, we were also short of expenditure. So it really doesn't have any impact on the bottom line. The bottom line there that you see on line 16 for revenue, we were about $4 million short of our estimated revenues, and we were about $4 million short of our estimated expenditures on line 40. There is a fairly significant difference in our expenditures from transfers. On line 55, and a couple of those that I'll highlight is we estimated a transfer expenditure of about $2.6 million into the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, and that was only about $212,000. We did not estimate that we would have to subsidize or make a transfer to the Westwood Fund, and we did, of about $260,000 to make that fund zero out at the end of the year. Same thing in the YFAC fund, whether it's over expenditures or under revenues in those two funds, just know that the general fund had to make up some losses in the YFAC fund and the Westwood fund. Dropping down then to the bottom line, our expenditures are about $6 million short on line 61 of estimate on the whole. All of this sort of came out in the wash though. On line 63, you see that we estimated that we would have a loss of about $5.6 million. We actually had a loss of about $5.8 million in the general fund. That obviously is not a good situation to be in. We're working towards addressing that in the longer term, but that's something that we continue to monitor and bring to council's attention. We ended fiscal year 25 with a general fund balance of $11.8 million, which is about $4 million above our mandated reserve in the general fund. That's down on line 69. The reserve for encumbrances that you see there on line 67 on things that we had encumbered the money for. We know who we're going to buy something from. We know how much we're going to pay, but the money had not gone out the door yet. So those encumbrances carry over into the fund balance into the new fiscal year that you see there on line 25, and that's where you will see some expenditures, revenues carrying over on lines 34 and 35. I want to look out there in column D. You see that the ending fund balance of $11.8 million carries forward as the beginning fund balance now for the estimated in fiscal year 26. I want to highlight the problem that we have with sales tax. You remember that we budgeted sales tax as flat, but it was flat of what we estimated for fiscal year 25. So since fiscal year 25 came in below where we thought we were going to be, there will be a concern that will be, if we're flat, we're going to be below where we budgeted to be for this fiscal year. All of those things coming out in the wash again, if everything is as expected, and it will never be, but we would lose $7.2 million in this fiscal year and end with a fund balance of $4.6 million, which is dangerously low. $1.3 million above our mandated 3% reserve. And again, we're not looking at the fiscal years going forward that we project, at least in this look, but just know that as we are progressing in the budget year, we will be. And those are things that we need to be addressing, that expenditures outpacing revenues is a problem in the general fund.
Mayor Holman.
And what is the main or primary contributing factors to that $7 million
The simple answer is
Besides
just
the loss
that,
of revenue, but what expenses?
yes, it's not so much a loss of revenue, it's just that expenses are growing faster than revenues are growing. We have the mandated 4% mandated merit increase for salaries, which carry over into benefits. And so our major revenue sources are not growing at 4%.
So is that across all city staff or?
Yeah, that's
So
across all.
4% increase every year across all city.
And that's
staff.
if there is no cost of living adjustment. That's just merit increases, yeah.
So, I mean, we always talk about how, I mean, most of our budget is personnel
In the general fund. yes.
salaries and benefits in the general fund, and that's what can make it really difficult to
That's what makes it really
try
difficult.
to reduce that spending is when it's on people, and we already have a shortage of staff people in like every department anyway, so, okay.
Okay, then turning to the Norman Forward Fund, I just wanted to point out a couple things there. Again, sales tax revenue in the Norman Forward Fund as well is below where we estimated it to be. We expect that to carry forward into this fiscal year. Use tax revenue is kind of right where we thought it would be, which is an interesting trend because it had been exceeding our expectations since use tax started. But we're, for lack of a better way of, I don't know if that's good or bad, but we're getting really good at projecting use tax. And, yeah, and that's not a conservative factor as it had been in the past. Dropping down there to the capital projects line, you see that we're about $8.6 million of project expenditures that we're expecting. That's mostly carryover things where we budgeted for things that were to be done in past years that are only now catching up. I wanted you to highlight those debt service figures. We're about $9 million of debt service payments in this fiscal year, and those are programmed out in the future. Those are the major expenditures that we have in the Norman Forward Fund going forward. And it was a conscious decision, and I believe a prudent one, that the city made and the council made and the fathers of Norman Forward made to issue debt so that we could build those facilities in advance of the money coming in. But now we're paying those loans off. We're paying that mortgage off, if you will, for the YFAC or for the library and those sorts of things. So those expenditures will continue to be reported. At the bottom line, though, you see that revenues expenditures exceed revenues on line 33. And we project that we will end this fiscal year with a $6.8 million fund balance in the Norman Forward Fund. And we will be talking more about this in the Financial Oversight Board. But as we have been projecting things going forward in the Norman Forward Fund, we were very concerned about where cash flows were going to be in fiscal year 26 and 27. But we're okay. We're doing okay. Whether that's because expenditures have lagged or revenues have been not as bad as we expected them to be. We expected that, we got to fiscal year 29, fiscal year 30, there'd be some money left over in Norman Forward, but there'd be this cash flow crunch in the middle years of 26 and 27. But it looks like we're going to be okay in those middle years. So the CFOB will be talking about that and making recommendations to you about what we might do with projects and making sure that all the projects are going to be covered and that sort of thing. But Norman Forward is in a relatively healthy state.
Mayor Holman?
I think over 90% of the projects are finished, from what I understand,
Yes.
have been accounted for. And with Norman Forward, talks of Norman Forward 2, we've talked before about the idea of doing more pay-go projects potentially, so we're not paying so much debt service. But I think Anthony's brought up a good point before about weighing that against if it takes us longer to raise the money, then the cost of the project getting more expensive, and does that wipe out the savings from not having to do debt service? So things we'll have to be thinking about over the next few years as that process moves forward, and how we think about wanting to fund it. Because I'm always like, man, that $9 million could build a whole nother thing if we.
Yeah.
But
Or you
then,
could say the $9 million has already been built. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there would not be if we had done things on a pay-as-you-go basis, you know, the library would be done by, both libraries would be done in the order that we did them. Both libraries would be done. We probably have the Westwood Pool facility, but we probably would not be able to have been in YFAC or in Ruby Grant Park or in Reeves or in the Senior Center, certainly not. So again, I think that was a prudent decision.
so maybe a community priority of, would we want to wait longer and maybe not have to pay so much debt, or do we want to do them quickly? And in my experience, most people are like, I voted for it and I want it all built
Want it now.
all at once immediately. So, but that's, I think, stuff for us to consider. And MAPS, I think, relies a lot on PAYGO, but Oklahoma City has a much larger tax base, of course, so they can.
And MAPS is 1%.
Yeah.
Norman Ford is 0.5%. So
So, okay, cool.
Here's Councilmember Dixon.
And just real quick, back on the credit card processing fee. Are we still being charged by the merchant